Hi there, ho there. Welcome to Beers and Buckets, the podcast for degenerates like us who love basketball and drinking beer, part of the Basketball Podcast Network, where you get the latest on your favorite teams, what's happening around the NBA and NCAA. My name is Connor, and I'm joined by Dowell. Dowell, how you doing, man?
Is that because we're doing the Big Ten, so you had to go all Midwest on us?
Yep, a little bit. And also, I've been watching that 70s show, so it's on my brain. Yep.
You're ridiculous. I'm doing well. I had a cousin that came through and called us and said that she had 2 extra tickets to the Tennessee-Kentucky game. So I'll be going to Neyland Stadium this weekend, which is going to be incredibly nerve-wracking. But yeah, doing well.
Fun little story. I have a friend that's a diehard Georgia fan, like grew up in Georgia, been to a bunch of games, whatever. One time we were doing this like 2 truths and a lie thing for school, and he's like, "Oh, I sang Rocky Top in Tennessee," and the other things he said sounded really like convincing. So we were like, "That's got to be the lie." It was the truth. He's like, I went to a Tennessee game that wasn't playing Georgia, and I sang Rocky Top in Tennessee. And I was like, you are a hypocrite, sir. But anyways, welcome to Beers and Buckets. Like I said, we're going to jump into this beer review so we don't waste any time. I'm going to go first this morning because I'm excited about this name. And also, I've had this beer in my fridge. I had a pack of this beer for over a month. I used 2 of them for chili, and then 2 of them my friend drank. So I had to go buy more for this podcast, but it's Divine Brewing's I Don't Give a Schnitzel. It's a Marzen, which is also a Oktoberfest or German-style amber lager. It's 6.3% ABV, 19 IBUs, and it's a 3.76 on Untapped. But it's really dark, but it really is it's a smooth drinking beer. So it's like, even though it's dark, it really finishes easy. So
nice.
I mean, no complaints. It's a good beer. I've had it before, like I said, but it's still a solid beer all around. Better on tap. Divine is here in Palm Harbor, Florida, which is about 15 minutes from me. So we went there a couple weeks ago, and I enjoyed one on tap. Much better on tap, like pretty much any beer you'll ever have, but it's still really good. So definitely check it out if you can, or order it online, whatever. But yeah, that's my beer. And comparing it to something college basketball, I don't really have a good comparison other than like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have one today. So I got nothing, just because it's hard to compare Marzen like Oktoberfest to something, you know. Just comparing it to Oktoberfest. How about that? There you go.
That's like using a word in the definition of its own word. Like, what's the meaning of pontificate? And then
what's like a German style school, you know, like,
I don't know,
like I can't think of it. Like Maryland, let's go Maryland basketball.
Sure, there you go. I, in honor of spooky season, still have from New Holland Brewing, which I feel like is a pretty big brewery. I feel like they at least have a large distribution network, I'll say it that way. It's based out of Michigan, which is fitting for this podcast. I have their Ichabod Pumpkin Ale, which obviously is referencing Ichabod Crane from Sleepy Hollow, who has the pumpkin as a head. Good stuff there. It's a 4.5% ABV. It had like a 3.5 something on Untapped. It's very pumpkin-y. So I like nutmeg in it too. Pretty good though. Definitely better than the pumpkin pie one I had last week. That just tasted like you were like shotgunning a beer and eating pumpkin pie at the same time. This is more like an actually like a one taste. It's pretty good actually. I would drink this.
Nice. What are you comparing it?
This is good. Let's go. Let's go with. I'm going to go with. I'm trying to compare it to a Big Ten team. Let's go Penn State. Fun to watch sometimes. They played really slowly last year, which means that you can't really watch a ton of it. I couldn't drink a bunch of these beers, but I could drink like one or two of these beers and enjoy it in small doses. So let's go Penn State.
Sounds good. All right, so let's do this. NBA fans, the wait is over. Basketball is back, so tip off the season with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can make any $5 NBA bets, moneyline bets, and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Check this out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings up to 100% with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, and place a stepped-up same-game parlay today. With payouts bigger than ever, DraftKings Sportsbook is where I go to bet on the NBA. Definitely smash the Hornets over on the Magic Hornets game because the Magic are missing like 10 players on the injury, or have 10 players listed on the injury report or something like that, something ridiculous, including Jalen Suggs and Cole Anthony. So their primary ball handler will be RJ Hampton, and nobody wants to see that. So go ahead and just bet the Magic to lose in that game. Do you have any games that Eric's matchups or anything this week that you're excited about?
So matchups, this is a very niche thing that I also realized will be coming out after we probably post this. But the Brooklyn Nets defense is horrendous this year. Just awful. They played the Bucks last night. We were recording at 11 o'clock on Thursday, the 27th. They played the Bucks last night, lost. They have the second leg of a back-to-back. The Mavs are coming to town. And Christian Wood and Luka Doncic are going to absolutely obliterate them. They might score 130 points. And their team total, I'm looking at it right now, is 114. And they will absolutely hit the over on that. So that's my play of the day. That you
sounds good.
Might not be able to play because you're hearing this too late.
Yeah, so definitely download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Make any $5 bet this week and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with promo code TBPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. So during the offseason, we've been breaking down the top 25 teams in college basketball. Well, now we're going broader. We're looking at conferences. Last week we talked about the Big East. The week before we talked about the ACC. This week we're breaking down the Big Ten. And it's a doozy. Buckle up because we had trouble putting this together. It's going to be fun to listen to say
I had
the
trouble
least.
because there are 14 teams in the Big Ten, which means that they are lying.
Yeah. Well, that's just conferences in general now.
True.
So let's do this projected order to finish. You ready for it? Let's go
Always.
through our top 5 teams here in the Big Ten. So do you want to do the honors, Dowell, and start off with your number 1 team?
We actually, just looking at this, we don't have many. We have 4 teams that overlap. So
yeah,
some big discussion going to be going on here.
Yep.
We do both have Indiana at number 1. I think this will be. I mean, like, I do, but it's also kind of funny because if Indiana is winning your conference, that does not speak well of your conference as a whole. They returned so much. There's a lot of the teams in the Big Ten are returning about half of their minutes, if not less. Indiana brings back Trace Jackson-Davis, who is it will definitely be a first-team All-Big Ten player, regardless of where you feel like he ends up there. But they're returning almost 80% of their minutes. They are pretty much the only team that did not add anyone in the transfer portal, and it's because they lost a couple like minor role players, but get essentially everyone back. So
yeah, and they have 2 top 25 or ESPN 25 players coming in, Malik Renew and Jalen Hood-Schifino. So yeah,
I think they're both top 30 on the like 24/7 composite.
Yeah. Yep. And then Caleb Banks is a top 100 player too. So, I mean, they're getting some talent in and they're replacing, role players. Like you said, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. They should be really good. Spoiler alert for the Big Ten Player of the Year and Coach of the Year discussion for later.
Yeah.
With both of us picking them to be 1.
Yeah. I have Indiana at 1 as well. I have Illinois at 2. I think they killed the transfer portal, which helped. And then they also have a solid.
They had to.
Yeah, they had to. You're right. But they killed the transfer portal, and they got a solid guard coming in Sky Clark. So I think that they should be really good. They completely obliterated the Big 12 with the transfer portal. By the way, like taking 3 Big 12 players and then adding in 3 top 100 players from for freshman class here. I mean, losing Kofi Coburn's a lot. But I mean, they still are going to be a really good team, I think, and they're just I like them. I like Brad. He's awesome. So
I mean, the real loss though is obviously Andre Curbelo, if we're being honest.
Well, yeah, because you're so high on them, you picked St. John's to finish 3rd or whatever in the Big East.
I'm not going to live that down, am I?
Nope.
Good.
Who's your second team in the Big Ten?
So my second team is the other player that I think will be the best player in the Big Ten other than Trace Jackson Davis, and that's Hunter Dickinson. So I have Michigan finishing second. They also did a good job in the portal, brought in Jalen Llewellyn from Princeton. There's like almost a 16-point per game score there, point guard, to kind of fill the Eli Brooks role, and then they brought in Joey Baker, who I don't expect to actually do that much, but he's
Joey Buckets, you mean?
Exactly. They have 2 top 40 players, including Jet Howard, who gets to play for his dad, which will be cool. A couple other cool guys that are like fringe top 100 players. Kind of shooting myself in the foot with them only returning like 28% of their total minutes from last year. Losing not just Brooks, but Caleb Houston, Diabate. But I think Hunter Dickinson is one of the 2 best players in the Big Ten. So yeah. I think they'll finish high.
Who do you have as your 3rd team?
I have the Iowa Hawkeyes as my 3rd team. We got Keegan Murray gone. Yeah, this is another one of our agreements. Keegan Murray gone, but Chris Murray, his brother, should be poised to have a big breakout season. I like Fran McCaffrey. He also, along with now 2 Howards playing for Juwan Howard at Michigan. McCaffrey has, 2 McCaffreys that play for him?
Yeah, Patrick and Connor.
Yeah, so... And it's Connor with an O-R, though.
Connor with an O-R. The normal way you spell it.
The lame way is what I think. But no, they're returning about 55% of their minutes. Added a couple actually top 150 players in 2 recruits there. So, I mean, Bohannon and Keegan Murray are big losses, but I like their thing, especially if Chris Murray can take a jump.
Yeah, I'm with you on them just because they're returning a lot of minutes, and it seems like, I don't know, outside looking at it, seems like Big Ten is down this year. So if they were a fringe, like if they were a top 3 team in the Big Ten last year, they can kind of keep that status here. So yeah, I like Fran McCaffrey as well, and it's a spoiler alert for my other, what we'll talk about later, the Big Ten Player of the Year and all that stuff, Coach of the Year and stuff like that. But so I have Iowa there as 3rd. At 4, I have Purdue. We already talked about Purdue a lot, so we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on them. But within their own episode that we did, but I mean they lost obviously huge players in Ivy and Williams and Stefanovic, and but they're replacing it pretty well with Lawyer. And they got David Jenkins from Utah. That's going to be a solid transfer. So, I mean, mainly you have Zach Edey. You're fine. So like they'll be okay. But yeah, I think they'll be fine here. And like I said, the Big Ten's down, so if they can kind of keep the course there in a kind of down year for Purdue, they might be able to sneak out, make a couple tournament appearances or win here, and then yeah. That's where I kind of have Purdue there.
They had one of the best offenses in the country last year with Jaden Ivey, Trayvon Williams, Stefanovic. All three of those guys were great offensive players.
Yeah.
I really am expecting them to take a huge jump on the defensive end.
Yeah.
I think if Zach Edey can play more minutes, that'll be huge for him. But my guess is they'll be a little bit more balanced than they were last year. And if their defense can be anything close to, like, if they can go from, they were like 90th in KenPom last year, if they can get to like 50th and take a little bit of step back on the offensive end, but really improve that defense, I think that'll be a big improvement for them.
Yeah. Who's your fourth or fifth team here? Sorry.
Fifth team is Ohio State, who I think you have like a decent amount lower, actually. But they lose E.J. Liddell, lose Malachi Branham. Those were the two big losses. They ended up actually losing a decent amount of other guys too, only returning 23 minutes. But they signed 4 guys in the top 62 at a range of positions, so not really like loading up on any one position there. So they can they could start an entire freshman starting 5 if they wanted to. They won't, but they have 5 freshmen coming in, as well as 3 transfer portal ads at kind of like the shooting guard / wing position, 2 from the Big 12, and Sean McNeil and Isaac Kelly. Yes, how you say his name? I don't know. From Oklahoma State. But then Tanner Holden is a guy that I'll talk about a little bit later. It's a small forward from Wright State that was a 20-point per game scorer last year. So adding those guys in, I think it'll take them a little bit of time to gel, but I really like the upside of this team, and I really like Holden as well.
Yeah, I have them 7th, but I'll talk about them in a little bit. Why I have them 7th? I have Michigan at 5, and you have them at 2. So that's kind of like I think the biggest difference between ours. I really like Hunter Dickinson, but if you look at this Michigan team, I think that it's the least talented of the last 3 teams for them. And last year's team was disappointing considering the talent that they had. So they didn't replace the talent well. They lost a lot of scorers. So I'm just not super high on them. I'm big when I'm doing these conference previews. I value returning experience. Unless you're like a top 20 player, I really valued returning experience. So Michigan didn't really get a lot of top 20 players. They got none actually. So the fact that they just didn't replace, Eli Brooks, Devontae Jones, Caleb Houston, Musa Diabate, like they didn't replace those guys well.
Yeah.
That's why I have them so much lower. But yeah, that's why I have them at 5. No, despite what Hunter Dickinson can do, I just think they're just not as talented as they have been, and they were fighting for a top 5 spot the last 2 years. So other than the year before, but yeah. So with the 6th spot, I have Michigan State. This is going to be one of Tom Izzo's least talented teams he's had in a while, but he's still a really good coach and puts people in a position to win, especially late in the year. So I think they'll finish 6th. I think they'll start lower than that, to be honest with you. They have Jackson Kohler, who's number 40, Trey Holman coming in 79, and then Carson Cooper, who's unranked. But they lost Gabe Brown, Marcus Bingham, Max Christie, and Julius Marble. So they lost 1 11-point scorer per game and then 2 9-point scorers per game. So, that's tough coming in. But returning Malik Hall helps and Hoggard. So, yeah, I think Michigan State will be just fine this year. Nothing to write home about. But Izzo is a Hall of Fame coach for a reason. So he'll get them into a spot that they'll be competitive.
He do be good at the coaching thing. I think it'll be interesting to see kind of who takes the leap from their list of returners. They have 4 guys that averaged between 7 and 9 points per game. So you're going to need, if not 1, 2 of those, probably more like 2 of those guys to take the next jump. So will be interesting to see. Malik Hall definitely is one guy that I think will, but will be cool to see kind of how they shake out.
Yeah, definitely. Who do you have? So you have them at 6 as well. Who do you have for your 7th team?
I have the Cliff Amarui-led Rutgers Knights. Are they the Scarlet Knights or just the Knights?
I think the Scarlet Knights.
Whichever one. I think they're going to be really good. They got, I a 19-point per game scorer coming in from Loyola, Maryland. That'll be fun. A couple top 300 guys on the recruiting side, and a guard and a forward. But I feel like that just going through as we go through these rankings, I feel like that I am leaning more into if you have one dominant player, especially a big, that will carry you this year in the Big Ten. Just seeing where I have Michigan ranked, Indiana ranked, and now Rutgers, because I think Cliff Armory is probably a first-team All-Big Ten player. So I'm excited about them.
Yeah, I'm really excited about them. That's kind of a spoiler alert for my 5 players to watch. But at 7, I have Ohio State. The reason, and so we talked about the discrepancy between what we had those two. You had them 5, I had 7. I think the bigger one was Michigan 2 and me having them at 5.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have Ohio State there. Like I said, I value returning players. They lost a lot of returners. Their 2 best players in E.J. Liddell and Malachi Branham. So like that was the 1-2 score right there. So replacing that's going to be tough. I mean, like they have 2 top 50 players coming in, so that should help. They, like you said, they hit the transfer portal hard, but I mean, like that last year, their offense was if E.J. Liddell is not scoring in the post, we're just gonna have Malachi Branham score on the perimeter. So just not having that fluidity there, I think this is gonna they have to figure a lot of stuff out and rely less on talent. So that's where I have them. And then 8, I have Rutgers there. So pretty much close to what you have yours, and for the same reasons, other than I think some of these other teams, you know, like maybe. You're a little bit higher on, or I'm higher on Illinois than you are. That's the biggest discrepancy.
I was going to say, I just realized that was.
So, yeah, that's why I have Rutgers finishing 8th there, but that's still a good spot for them, especially considering what they had been finishing before. So, and this is not a Rutgers hate podcast by any means. So, tell me your 8th team then.
It is the Illinois Fighting Illini.
Wow.
So returning only 16.5% of their minutes. Their highest leading scorer that they're returning is Coleman Hawkins, who averaged under 6 points per game. They did a really good job in the transfer portal, like you said, getting Terrence Shannon and Matthew Mayer. But I think the reliance on freshmen, especially with their top freshmen, like I think Sky Clark will be very good in college basketball. But yes, he's a freshman and is a 30 ranked player according to the composite, but he is missed an entire year with a torn ACL, which means that just development there is going to be stunted regardless of like how well you recover from that. So just, I don't know. I don't know if I love Brad Underwood to like fully maximize this team. It's just in a world where there's a ton of, even if it's not like a ton of returning players, there's just a ton of bigs. I don't see who they're going to really have to be able to go up against a lot of the bigs in the Big Ten, which I feel like is the Big Ten strength. So I don't know. I just am not high on Illinois, but like I say that, and I have them 7th, but I feel like that it kind of drops off a cliff after this 7th team. So, and honestly, like if you told me that they ended up in 4th and Purdue like dropped down to 7th, like I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is like kind of like nitpicking a little bit in these top 7, especially like 4 through 7. But I don't know, just I think this might be a little bit of a rebuilding year for Illinois.
Fair enough. All right. So who do you have at 9th here?
9th, I have Penn State. Who, let me scroll down to their little guy. They lost Sam Sessoms and John Harrar, 2 double-digit scorers, but honestly have a decent amount coming back. They have their 2 top leading scorers coming back. Added a couple guys from 2 16-plus point per game scorers from Drexel and Bucknell and Cameron Winter and Andrew Funk, respectively. And also have a pretty solid recruiting class. It's a 5-man recruiting class with 4 guys in the top 200 in terms of 24/7 Sports composite. So I don't know, just I think they'll be fun. I would like to see them play a little bit faster, especially if they're going to have that kind of depth. I mean, they return 5 guys, 3 guys in the transfer portal, plus probably 3 or 4 recruits that play. So they should be pretty deep in terms of their rotation. So they should hopefully play a lot faster than they did last year. They were 358th in the conference or in the country last year in pace, which is super boring. But they should be able to score.
Yeah, Andrew Funk definitely has jumped up into the first all-name team
Absolutely.
for college basketball because you got the Funk, so pretty awesome. My 9th team here is Wisconsin. Not super high on them. We talked about them before. Losing Johnny Davis and Brad Davison are huge losses.
Thank God Brad Davison is gone. That man was in college for forever. I'm pretty sure he was on that 2013 team that beat Kentucky.
It feels like it, but it's been whatever. But I'm just not super high in Wisconsin this year. They didn't replace them very well. We talked about them in the offseason episode breakdown for Wisconsin's whole team. So go listen to that episode if you understand why we're not high on them. But yeah, that's my 19th. My 10th team here is Maryland. Just tough sledding for Maryland the last few years, obviously, but. I mean, finishing 10th could be worse. I mean, they're losing Fats Russell. That sucks. That's a first all-name team.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm super high on Jameer Young. Well, I'll talk about him a little bit. The transfer from Charlotte, so I think he'll be the bright spot for them and something to kind of build on for them. But yeah, nothing super great going on for Maryland here. So we'll see what happens. I could be totally wrong. Who do you have as your 10th team?
10th team, I have Wisconsin. Like you said, it's just losing a lot, and I don't know if you are able to replace all the production that you're losing. Especially, man, just like watching that team last year, it just was. Johnny Davis scored almost 20 points per game, but it feels like that his impact was even more great than just scoring 20 points per game. So I just don't know if you're able to fully replace that. Do want to shout out my man Jacoby Neath, who will probably be their backup point guard this year. I don't know. They had 2 transfer guards coming in, so he'll be in the rotation there. But he's a former Wake Forest player that I really enjoyed. That is like big, strong. I think Canadian as well, which is cool. I have Wisconsin 10th, and then I have Maryland 11th, which Maryland's going to be one of those that is very interesting to me. They bring back 2 guys that scored around 10 points per game. A lot of like forward, like kind of hybrid 3-4 kind of guys. That'd be fun. They brought in 3 guys that scored double digits last year. And Jameer Young also, but Donald Carey from Georgetown and Patrick Emilian from St. Francis, Brooklyn, which is an interesting pull. But I worry about them being able to guard the big centers as well, but they should be able to have a pretty solid offense. And they're one where I think they have the biggest kind of range of outcomes that I could see, depending on how those guys that they brought in translate to, especially scoring-wise.
That's how I feel about Penn State, who's my 12th team here. 11th team. If it goes out well, they'll probably be higher, obviously, but I don't know if it will. I just never know what you're going to get with Penn State basketball. Like, you have a good idea what you're going to get out of Penn State football. You're doing your Be Real, aren't you? Because I just did mine.
Yep.
With the 12th team for me, I have Nebraska. They lost Bryce McGowens and Alonzo Verge Jr., so that's 2 like double-digit averaging players and 16 points and 14 points. So that's a lot that you're losing. Trey McGowan's is staying, which is nice. Derek Walker's staying. CJ Wilcher is staying, but this was not a really good Nebraska team last year. So I think losing two of your best players and not replacing them well is not that means bad. I mean, but means bad news for them. But they're also, and it's a lower year for the Big Ten. So who knows? But I'm just not super sold on Nebraska this year. So that is my 12th team. Who is your 12th team?
12th team is Northwestern. They will be not good. I am kind of excited about Boo Buie, who is also in the first team all-name team for the Big Ten. But lost Pete Nance, who was their best player last year. Their schedule is weirdly tough. So this Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota tier is probably the bottom four teams. Well, you have Penn State in there, so we can throw them in there, whatever. Yeah. Northwestern only gets 4 games against those teams, so they only play Maryland once, they only play Nebraska once, and they only play Minnesota once, and they only play Penn State once. So their schedule just does not work out for leading to favor. Them being good at all. I do like Chris Collins, though. And like I said, I really enjoy Boo Buie, who I'll talk about a little bit later. But, yeah, I have them at 12. I have Nebraska at 13, so we just have them flipped.
Yeah.
Nebraska, again, similar thing to Johnny Davis in Wisconsin being Bryce McGowan's was that whole team last year. And however many points he scored, his impact was more than just his 17 points per game.
Yeah.
And I just, regardless of who they brought in, they have a pretty solid transfer portal addition as well as a top 100 recruit. But just, I don't know how you replace a guy like Bryce McGowan's.
First team Big Ten all name team is also Denham Dawson. I mean, if your first name's Denham,
that's a good one.
Pretty swaggy there. So he's got to show out with a denim suit if he gets drafted. There's no other way around it. I have Northwestern as my 13th team as well. So like you said, we just had them flipped, but it's honestly at that point, who cares?
Splitting hairs.
Yeah, exactly. We both agree, though, that Minnesota will be the worst team in the Big Ten this year, and it's not even close, I don't think. They're just so bad, and I feel bad for them. I feel for them really bad. But they lost a lot. They lost 2 double-digit scorers. They didn't replace it well. The kind of the narrative that we talked about this whole episode. But when you lose a lot and you don't replace it well, but there's an interesting name of a transfer there. You want to tell us who transferred to Minnesota?
They got Dawson Garcia, who I think was he not a transfer from Marquette to North Carolina last year? So this will be his second transfer. But former five-star guy scored 9 points per game last year at North Carolina. So I mean that should be a solid addition. But I mean still just also wanted to call out too. I was just coming here to look up their stats, but the injury bug normally kind of hits throughout the season, but they have already lost 2 of their forwards to knee injuries for the 2022-2023 season. So Isaiah Indnan, I don't know, and Parker Fox are both out for them, who they were expecting to play this year. So that's obviously not good, especially whenever you're only returning 21% of your minutes to begin with.
That's tough, man. That's tough.
They're going to be bad.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on.
Their guards, they have 3 guards on their lineup, on their team, according to this.
Yikes. Big yikes. All right, so let's move on to the 5 players to watch. Do the honors. Give us your first player to watch.
My first player is, as someone who listened to the podcast last year, I was incredibly high on Keegan Murray. I drafted him in my fantasy draft, my dynasty draft, and he is great. Love Keegan Murray. I have his little brother Chris as my first player to watch. He actually put up really good defensive numbers. I know Keegan was more known for being a scorer, but Chris Murray actually was nationally ranked for both block and steal rate, which is awesome. Getting some stonks there. And he is good at drawing fouls, good offensive rebounder for just being 6'8", and shot 39, almost 39% on 111 attempts last year from three. And I think that the increased role will really do him a lot of good. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him end up first team or second team All Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I left him for you there, so you're welcome.
Thanks.
No, I have my first player to watch is Terrence Shannon Jr., the transfer into Illinois from Texas Tech. He averaged double digits in a better defensive conference and in the Big 12, so I think he should have a really big role at Illinois. Like we talked about them, they're replacing a lot. And so he's fighting for that, probably a lead scoring role or like a top 3 scoring role. And then obviously like he's a great defender as well. So that's who I have as my first player watch. My second player watch will always be until he's out of college basketball is Cliff Omarui. He averaged 14 points a game last year at Rutgers, was kind of the probably the third or fourth best big man in the Big Ten, and probably going to be a top 3 big man in the Big Ten this year too. So just something to watch for. He's the GOAT. There's no other way around it. So Cliff Omarui, that's my second player to watch.
You left me Chris Murray, but you took Cliff Omarui, which is kind of sad. It's fair trade, but sad because I love Cliff Murray. I have who will be the biggest man in the Big Ten. It's my next pick, Zach Edey from Purdue. He's absolutely massive. Best offensive rebounder in the country last year in terms of offensive rebounding percentage. Monster at drawing fouls. I think he drew something like almost 8 fouls per 40 minutes. He only plays like 20 minutes, which I mentioned earlier about him being able to increase his minutes is going to be really important. So if he can do that and stay on the floor, that'll really help kind of anchor the Purdue defense, and will also, in a league that is built on big men, if he can get other big men in foul trouble, that will be huge. And he is very good at doing that. So Zeki, number 2 on my 5 players to watch.
Who's your third player?
It is Jalen Llewellyn, who I mentioned earlier, was top 25 guard at Michigan, transferred in from Princeton, was top 25 in 15 categories on KenPom. And KenPom, I think, has around 20 categories on their player stats page. So just an absolute monster across the board. Will be a major shooter for them to pair with Hunter Dickinson. Really excited to see their kind of inside-out game. I think if Michigan does end up being where they finish, in terms of my prediction, finishing second in the Big Ten, it will probably be because they got a big year out of Jalen Llewellyn.
Yeah. I have Patrick McCaffrey as my third player to watch. Solid experience, obviously knows the offense and defense very well, living with the coach probably, and just experience there, obviously, we talked about. But also, he was a 10-point scorer, a 10-point per game scorer last year with Keegan Murray going out and Jordan Bohannon leaving. I think he's going to be the 2 and the 1-2 punch of the Chris Murray, Patrick McCaffrey combo there. So I think you should see an increase in production for him just because there's more minutes and more points to be had. So he should get that.
Does this mean we're a pro nepotism podcast? Is that what? I thought that you picking him means that we
Well, no, because the difference is he's actually good, and the Boeheims, he would play whatever Boeheim kid was there just to play them. Whereas there's a Connor McCaffrey, and Connor McCaffrey's not good. So
he's the only one that is benefiting from nepotism.
Yeah, a little bit, but also he's just probably good. It's not a Brad Calipari situation by any means.
Hey, he wasn't given anything; it was earned.
So my next player to watch is Sky Clark. He's going to be the best freshman, I think one of the best freshmen in the conference, but that's not saying a whole lot. Dowell and I both agree that it felt like every conference had their pick of whatever freshman they want, and then they just took the pool of the remaining players in this class, and we're like, have at it, pick what you want for the Big Ten. So that kind of sucks. But Sky Clark, formerly committed to Kentucky, committed to Illinois. I think he's still going to be a really good player for this team. It's going to take him a little bit to find his way, but I think he'd be fine and smooth. And I think he's going to be better as a facilitator than we give him credit for going into the season. But yeah, that is my fourth player to watch in this conference here in the Big Ten. So
Jalen Hood-Schifino would like a word, considering
True.
that he and Malik Renault were both technically ranked higher than Sky Clark. But
I think Sky Clark's rankings also just due fact to the injury, like that knocked him down.
That is true. It definitely did not help him that he missed. And then, I mean, this isn't supposed to matter, but I'm sure the like drama around decommitting from Kentucky and that I wouldn't be shocked if that kind of.
But Illinois fans, don't go too crazy. I saw some of y'all saying he's the next Kyrie. That's not what I'm saying,
bro.
Because that's the terrible, terrible comparison. Not
who's the next Kyrie?
Who's the next Kyrie?
Rob Dillingham.
Yeah,
that man has handles.
Yeah,
Anyways,
that step back was nasty.
This is not a Kentucky recruiting podcast. All right, my next player is Tanner Holden, another transfer. The transfer from Wright State to Ohio State, so staying pretty close, moving from Dayton up to Columbus. 20 point per game score in the Horizon League last year. Incredible at drawing fouls. Just with a lot of these teams not being deep, I feel like that might be even more important. It's just the ability to draw fouls and get the opponent in foul trouble. It's almost like getting to the bullpen in a baseball game where one of the big things that you really are trying to do is kind of get the starter out, get to the bullpen, and it usually becomes easier to hit there. Similar process here. He also is a good positional rebounder. He's like 6'6", small forward, but is pretty solid at rebounding there. So I'm really excited to see him work at Ohio State, filling the void for Liddell and Branham.
Sounds good. Who's your last player?
It's Boo Buie, Northwestern, all-name team. Had to throw him in here. Wouldn't be shocked if he leads the Big Ten in assists. He is incredibly efficient at doing that. He also scores from the foul line pretty efficiently and gets there relatively efficiently, which, as we know, I very much enjoy. So threw him on here just because all of my other players were kind of on the top teams. I think that's indicative of the lack of strength or I guess just the weakness of the bottom of the Big Ten this year. But wanted to still give a shout out to a guy on one of the lower teams, just if you're like kind of looking to, a random Tuesday night where there aren't many other games. If you're looking to tune in, Northwestern will be worth watching because Boo Buie.
Yeah. I have Jameer Young as my last player to watch. I think he's going to be one of the top guards in the conference. He transferred from Charlotte to Maryland, like we talked about. So he was really fun to watch when I watched the Wake-Charlotte game last year. I know you were in person for that game. Just incredible scorer, incredible facilitator, all around, solid defensive player too. So I think he'll be one of the top guards in the conference. Just keep an eye out for him. So let's move on to the Big Ten Player of the Year. Who's your Big Ten Player of the Year?
It's Trace Jackson Davis. We haven't really honestly talked about him a ton, other than our little preview for Indiana. But he's just incredibly good. But he also, I think, unlike some of the other guys, will be taking on a bigger role for that team, which is kind of why I edged him out over Hunter Dickinson and Cliff Omarui. I just feel like that he already was a huge role on that team and will just continue to get better. So I think he's going to have kind of the volume. Plus, I think Indiana will be a little bit of a Cinderella. I mean, they won't be a Cinderella because everyone is expecting them to do well, but they've been down for so long. I feel like that the narrative kind of around him bringing a basketball back will be something that is beneficial to his Big Ten Player of the Year hunt.
Yeah, if you hadn't picked him, I would have picked him. But I have Hunter Dickinson as my Big Ten Player of the Year. Just what he's done the last 3 years at Michigan is nothing short of incredible. and he's going to continue to dominate this year. So excited for him, and I think he very well could win that outright, even over Tracy Jackson Davis. So we'll see. Big Ten Coach of the Year. I have Fran McCaffrey. I have Iowa finishing third. They are losing two really good players. So the fact that if they can finish third and still finish top three and losing two good players like that says a lot of how good of a coach Fran McCaffrey is. And the fact that they've just been nationally prominent in the last few years says a lot to him as well, like his recruiting ability, but his player development's been unreal there. So that's why I have Fran McCaffrey as my Big Ten Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these Coach of the Year, Player of the Year type stuff are always really narrative based, and the losing Keegan Murray, and if they finish there, like losing Keegan Murray and not missing a step kind of thing, I could definitely see them them winning that. I have another coach that will have a great narrative if they are able to win, and it's Mike Woodson. Keeping my picking Mike's train going, because I picked Mike Anderson to be the Big East Coach of the Year on our last episode. Mike Woodson, if Indiana finishes first, I don't know how you don't give it to Mike Woodson, especially since they've been terrible since Tom Crean was there. I feel like he would be a shoo-in if they end up getting first. There's not a lot of times where the team that just like wins it is who gets it, because a lot of times it's, oh, did you like overperform versus expectations, that kind of thing. But if they finish first, I don't know how Mike Woodson doesn't win the award.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably how I feel too. Just had to pick somebody different. But no, I agree with that. It's like a lot of these, if you have to pick one person, you have another person in mind too. So that's kind of how I feel about it. So, so let's move on. Last thing is a Big Ten hot take. For me, this feels like one of those weird years where the Big Ten will get no media love, but they'll still have incredible tournament success due to dumb luck. Like, I just feel like we're due for something like that. Just kind of how like ACC got last year. They had no media love all year, but then they had like 5 teams in the Elite Eight or something like that. Something incredible like that. So this just feels like one of those years for the Big Ten. Like, they're due for that, because typically they get all the media love and then they underperform in the tournament. So we'll see.
Tournament's wild, man.
Yeah.
My hot take is that the Big Ten will be the 5th best conference in college basketball this year.
That's not a hot take. It's not a hot take by any stretch of this.
The ACC got absolutely like shit on last year, and I feel like that's saying that they're going to be better than the Big Ten, who always gets the like bump for having the, what do they have? Do they have a 16-game conference schedule when most teams have 14? Whatever it is, they end up playing more conference games, which ends up boosting their overall kind of conference outlook. I think they're going to be the 5th best team, or the 5th best conference this year, especially because those like Final Four teams, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota, I feel like that they are going to really kind of drag them down. So that's my hot take.
I like it. So you guys should go follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Beers and Buckets Pod, and then subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching along on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and go ahead and give us a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And while you're at Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Those help us go a long way. The more traction and traffic there is in the reviews and likes and things like that, the better it helps shares the episode organically. So we would love for you to do that. Check out the Basketball Podcast Network on Twitter for more shows like this one. This has been an incredibly fun episode. I do want to tease something that we are looking at doing next week. We'll still do our conference previews, but we are going to break it up with a fantasy basketball draft. If you listened to the Courtside Connect last year, we did that on their podcast with Matt Sack and Scott Clark.
You did that.
Well, I
was not invited. This was
prior to Beers and Buckets' birth, which is coming up in approximately 8 days, as when I'm celebrating our 1-year anniversary. So, but anyways, happy birthday, Beers and Buckets. But we are going to be doing a fantasy basketball draft This is something that I was a part of last year. This was incredibly fun, considering that Beers and Buckets, we host a college basketball show, not just a Kentucky basketball show. It made more sense for us to do it on this platform. And so it's going to be an incredibly fun time. Listen in. We'll do a draft episode, and then we're going to do a recap episode at the end, towards the end of the season. It's going to be a super fun time. But be on the lookout for that. That's going to come out next week. So this has been an awesome episode in itself. Despite the fact that it's a poo-poo conference, it's going to be fun for you guys to listen to this. So check it out. Big Ten. Let us know your thoughts on Twitter. If we hit the nail on the head or if we totally missed the mark and they're going to have 10 tournament teams, let us know what your thoughts are. We appreciate you guys listening. This has been The Bottom Line because Connor said so. You guys have a fantastic week.